Welcome to the CoreWalking podcast, a step in the right direction. I'm Alex Mabalon,
And I'm Jonathan Fitzgordon.
and we're here to talk about hypermobility. And we started actually kind of chatting about it a little bit before. I was talking about one of my former clients who is having some like chronic pain issues, and so I was telling you, Jonathan, that I was checking in on her because I haven't talked to her since the beginning of the new year, and you were asking me what was going on with her, and I said, she's a person in her 80s, so she used to be a yoga teacher. I think might have, it's not an impossibility knowing the kind of person she is, that she pushed herself pretty hard in those yoga classes and while, being in her yoga teaching tenure. And she's had a lot of problems. Like she has a problem with one of her hips, and then the other hip as a result is also in pain. And I think she might have a bone spur in one of her hips. I can't remember exactly. But she also had this crazy replacement surgery for her shoulder where they like flip the socket. So instead of like hanging down, it's like, I'm like motioning it for people who aren't on the video cast, but it basically they put the bone in like this so that the shoulder hangs in it instead of
Right.
hanging from the socket, right? Like this, instead of the socket being here, it's flipped. So the ball is in here. It's like hanging down like this. So anyway, it sounded like a crazy thing, and like I saw her shoulders obviously not as not I'm not going to say deformed, but it's not doesn't have the same shape as the other one, and she had to go through like a year of rehab, but that was the only way to really fix it in such a way. And since we're discussing, I mean, this doesn't go into hypermobility directly, but it kind of leads into it. Yoga is taught by so many people in so many different ways, right? And the way I taught it was the way I learned it recently, because I finished my teacher training recently, was the Anusara method, which is what you also followed. And the Anusara method, I feel like there's much more talk about mobility and engagement of muscles rather than just going as far as you can. Like take this pose as deep as you can. It's like first, like in Anusara, it's like firm up, bring everything to the center line in a sense, like firm up your muscles and then expand out of that. You know what I'm saying? And that is an instruction that I never heard before. I went and admittedly, the teacher training was 200 hours of yoga, so it's not like a 45-minute class. We were just trying to get through because where I work at Crunch Fitness, it's like the class of 45 or 60 minutes. And that's just, it's like there's just only so much you can do, right? But I feel like in an hour and a half class, you should be able to talk about muscular engagement and stuff like that. I just don't think it's done that much. I have a few clients that have hypermobility issues, and it's like a crazy thing to see somebody's elbow like bend the wrong way and just like kind of this part of it, like the inside of the elbow, like kind of stick up. I have these words that you often say, like at some point that is not going to add up well,
Yeah.
and so I'm trying to teach them about muscular engagement and trying not to like send your knees all the way back, and lift your arches and whatnot. But it's always like it's a slog because I've been doing it for so long, and I have one client who had like basically collapsed arches, and he's like, "Are you trying to tell me that I have flat feet?" And I'm like, "You're 58 years old and nobody's ever told you had flat feet? That's crazy. That's just crazy." And so I've helped. It's been we've been working together for a while, and he only sees me once a week, so it's not once a week is there's only so much you can do, right? 2 or 3 times a week is really the ideal, but his arches are lifted now,
That's great.
and it's like he can stand on one foot, which he couldn't do before
Oh, that's awesome.
as well.
Just to go back to yoga, I just want to be clear. Yoga is bad for you.
No, it isn't.
No. So, no, it's not. But it's one of my favorite raps, and I'll tell you why I say yoga is bad for you. And this does connect to hypermobility in some way, but it's also about tightness. Let's say you're doing yoga and you have a tight right hip and a regular left hip, right? All good. And in yoga, most classes start by doing the right side first, step your right foot forward. So let's say you're in down dog and the teacher says, step your right foot forward and you're going to do a low lunge. So step the right foot forward, put the back knee on the floor, bring the arms up, and you go into that stretch and you're just tight and you're not getting anything out of it and you're frustrated and that hip is just not giving you anything. And then you go back to down dog, and then the teacher says, step the left foot forward. You step the left foot forward, put the knee down, and you go, oh my God, now I could finally stretch. And then what have you accomplished in that, where you work really hard on the side you can stretch, but on the side that's tight, nothing really happens. So to me, when you're doing that, you're just increasing your imbalances. You're
Agree.
not you're not using yoga to decrease your imbalances. And that's my yoga is bad for you rap. And honestly, I would say it's better to do it wrong than not do it at all. But you got to do these things with consciousness. And when it comes to mobility and hypermobility, it's yoga, weightlifting. It is be really bad. It will not add up well when you're hypermobile and not aware of it. And I will say, what I do is kind of odd. And I teach people to walk and I teach people to stand. And well, the clients who find me are people who have been to multiple doctors without getting help and surgeries and injections and no one is helping them. So they find their way to me and, desperately Googling at 3 o'clock in the morning. And then we start working together and invariably takes a while, a couple of sessions, four, I don't know, it's relative, where I say, wait, do you realize that you have like hypermobility issues? And they look at me like I'm crazy. And I say,
Yeah.
well,
Sounds familiar.
so hypermobility is a specific thing, and there's a test. There are different levels of hypermobility. You can be basically hypermobile. My hypermobility is not nearly as bad as some, and my whole story is hypermobility, right?
Yeah.
My knees, but in truth, my elbows don't hyperextend, right? So there's a
Yeah.
test, there's the Baton scoring system, right? That's based on Ehlers-Danlos.
Yeah.
Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, which is an extreme form of hypermobility, which is a very intense and difficult syndrome to have, right? So the Ehlers-Danlos people created this test. It's called the Baton scoring system. And they basically look at your joints, So if you can hyperextend your knees, if you can hyperextend one knee, that's 1 point, both knees 2 point. Hyperextend your elbows, that's another 2 points. Bow forward and place your feet flat, place your hands flat to the floor with no effort, that's another point. And then like, can you bend your thumbs back? So like you can see
Yeah.
my thumb bends, but it's not touching. If you can touch your
Yeah. It's
thumb,
like has to.
or
Yeah.
yeah, so I'm mobile, right? But my fingers are much more. But still, they don't go much behind 90 degrees, right?
Right.
So those are your tests, and it's 9 point test, and if you score five, you're hypermobile. So I tell people like I think you're hypermobile, and they look at me like I'm crazy, but in truth, hypermobility is sort of I'm not coming up with the phrase I want, but it's a hidden disease in that, and it's not a disease, but it's hidden in that you can go
Syndrome.
through life. Say again?
It's a hidden syndrome.
Yeah, you can go through life being hypermobile and have no clue. Because most people don't think that because you can most people don't realize they lock their knees to begin with.
That's true.
And then you can go through life like that and never have any clue that you're too loose. And then a lot of people, when I say to them, I think you're hypermobile, they're like, you're out of your mind. My hamstrings are tight, my hips are tight. And I say, you can be loose in your joints and tighten up around those joints to compensate for the excessive looseness. My hypermobility manifests purely as looseness, not a loose muscle in my body. When I go to get rolfed or get massaged, massage does nothing for me, right? Like it
Yeah.
does, it's fine, but I don't even feel that much different afterwards because I'm just loose already. And it's hysterical because over the years, so many people they get to my IT band intensa fasciolata and they go, "Oh my God, finally something is tight."
Right.
And that's like the one somewhat tight part of my body, and it's not even that tight. So that's my hypermobility is looseness, looseness, looseness. The problem with that kind of hypermobility is it allows you to be very good at yoga. And, my story is 2.5 years of advanced yoga, blew out my knees, 3 knee surgeries before I realized, oh, it's not so good to be able to do lotus as easily
Right.
as I can. It's not so good to be able to do splits as easily as I can. And then I had to turn that around and build muscle.
Right.
And once I build muscle, now Lotus is not as easy for me as it used to be, thankfully. Splits are not as easy. I used to do splits with no tension, right? Flat to the floor, no tension. I used to say, yeah, I can do them because I have no penis, which is not true. But now I can still do them, but they're full of really good tension. I go, oh, that's a hamstring. Wow, how nice to feel that. And, that's like, to me, the cure for hypermobility. There are so many different issues that land in the bucket of hypermobility. And what's crazy is often I'll point out to a client that I think, who knows if I'm right or wrong, I think they have hypermobility. And then over time, they'll mention, like, oh, I have IBS, irritable bowel syndrome. And I'm like, well, that's purely connected to hypermobility. Or they'll say, I have GERD, like intense heartburn. I'm like, well, that's another thing connected to hypermobility, constipation, just one thing after another, like organ prolapse, like looseness leads to all sorts of trouble and clicking joints and like, so anyway, hypermobility is the story of my life. My parents passed away terribly, right?
Right.
My father never exercised a day in his life other than putting cigarettes to his lips. He
Yeah.
got away with it because when you don't exercise, when literally all you do is sit at a desk, ride a train, sit at a desk, ride a train, sit on the couch, yeah, why are you going to get injured? Right? So he
Yeah.
got through 75 years of life without a real injury. But because he was hypermobile and never exercised and therefore had no muscle, he had a fall at 75 and it was downhill from there. He never
Right.
really recovered from that first fall, but he started falling over and over and over again. And he broke a number of bones. And the last 10 years of his life were not good, right?
Right.
Um, he was a pretty miserable dude and he hated work. So the 10 years before that, he retired at 65. 65 to 75 was just golden. And then once he started getting injured, just didn't go well. And my mother's story is, back pain, a surgery that didn't go well, but she ended up last 5 years of her life in bed, right? And then these two people who now in retrospect, I realize were hypermobile. My mother did yoga in the 70s, and could do lotus and all those same things.
Yeah.
They had, yeah, yeah, that's the story of like she made me do yoga for a year when I was 6 and I didn't want to. She made me do a lot of things I didn't want to do. And I resented her for it. But I feel like when I went back to yoga at 32, I was like, oh, I'm home. Like I have a sense memory of this that was really
Right.
deep. But my parents had 3 kids, and all 3 are hypermobile. My sister was born with a displaced hip, which was led to so many problems. She was in a cast for a year as a baby, which they should never have done. But she's had a hip replacement, broken multiple bones. My brother has had both knees replaced, 2 spinal surgeries, a
A jaw surgery.
jaw surgery, which is connected, not connected, because everything is connected. And if, I don't know, 6 months ago, I'm like, yeah, but it's just because we're all hypermobile. And he's like, what are you talking about hypermobile? And I'm like, my brother's a big dude, and I was like, Peter, we used to wrestle in Lotus when we were children. Like we would have races. We would run around on our knees in Lotus. Like it's not that it's not normal, but we are just too loose. And in large part, I believe he physically fell apart because of his hypermobility. And what I've discovered from my clients is how few hypermobile people know they're hypermobile. You know if you're tight, right? You know
Yeah.
if you can't touch your hands to the floor. You know there's just but it's easy for hypermobility to slip under the radar, and that's become a really interesting piece of my puzzle. Like, my clients fall into two categories mostly. People that are too sensitive for the world, right? Where medical intervention doesn't serve them, medicines don't serve them, surgeries don't serve them, and that's a good swath of the world. And
Yeah.
so, highly sensitive people and then hypermobile people. And there's a connection there too. That's really the people that I am working with and helping. And I feel like, wow, there's a huge piece to educating people more about about whether or not they're hypermobile, and to try to discover if that's part of your situation in your story.
For me, it's always going back to yoga, right? I think like if I think back and you said when you rediscovered yoga at 32, you said I'm home, and there's a part of me that feels like when I go to a yoga class, and this is not always the case because since I've actually graduated from yoga teacher training, I feel weirdly less connected to yoga. But I do think that for me, it was my idea was like it was going to heal all my problems, right? All my tightnesses, and my tightnesses come from, I have some form of IBS. It's not terrible, but it has been in the past terrible. And that comes from, anxiety and stress, but also maybe some hypermobility. And I know that like my ankles are definitely not like they never hurt. They can twist, and I've twisted my ankles many times. I've never really done anything to them, right? And my brother, on the other hand, twists his ankle and he's like out for he's out for the season. You know what I mean? So it's like, so it's not to say that we are born a little bit differently. My father's fucked up his ankles numerous times, and my ankles can twist any which way, and it doesn't matter. It's never been, knock on wood, it has rarely been a problem, except recently because now I have a knee thing, which I think stems probably partially from that and my tight hips. Um, but I thought yoga was going to fix all my problems. And then, the thing is, like, then you go into yoga classes and everybody's doing these crazy things, and you want to do the same thing, and you end up like pushing yourself a little too far and you get hurt. And I think my knee, like blowing my knee out, was partially due to yoga, to be perfectly honest. I mean, certainly it was a snowboarding incident that then led to, it didn't lead to anything, but it was a snowboarding incident compounded with my stubbornness to continue skiing that day and the day after, because we were at this ski resort. So I was like, not gonna waste my time sitting around. And then it was, it happened. I finished it playing basketball, going up for rebound with my crazy jumping, and but I do think like yoga put a lot of strain on my knees, and that it may not have happened, may not, and because it may absolutely have, um, if I hadn't done yoga. Um,
Well, like,
I again like, and then I'd be going into these yoga classes, and people, I see these people who are like former dancers, former gymnasts, and who are just, doing full splits. But I'm also thinking like, this in the beginning I was like, this is amazing, like they must be so fit and whatever. But now I'm thinking to myself, like, is this really serving them well? Because I have, like I said, I have a couple of clients who are hypermobile, who can do like a full split, who can put their hands on the floor but who have like no muscle tone, who have like no muscles in their legs, and at some point, like, these people are like in their 20s or 30s, and at some point it's just not gonna add up well, especially because a couple of them are like a little extra weight. And I think like the more weight you put on top of joints that are hyperextended, the worse it is, obviously. That's the whole point of like you want to like bend your knees when you weight lift a little bit so that you're not crushing the joint. If you're putting weight on your back and you're doing a squat or something or deadlift, like you don't want to be crushing the
Want
joint.
to soften your knees for any athletics. That's just part of that process. But one of my phrases
Oh,
is
universal athletic position, is knees bent, torso
that's it.
forward a little bit.
That's it. Think
Mhm.
about golfing, baseball, soccer. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Listen, you're bending your knees, you're sticking your butt out, you're getting into your core.
Yeah, no,
Um,
it's called the universal athletic position for a reason because it's for
yeah,
every sport,
that's right.
There's
I've never even heard that phrase.
yeah,
Uh,
it's a phrase that's used in like the fitness
that's
world.
great. Well, I mean, and that's what I'm teaching, right? When I show people their posture and I say, this is your old you posture, tell me any sport you can do that way, right? Like what we think of as good posture will not let us accomplish anything athletically.
Thanks.
To me, that's a tell. But I was going to say is one of my phrases is what you can get away with in your 30s, 40s, and 50s will come back to haunt you in your 60s, 70s, and 80s, right? Like
Yeah,
all I care about is aging well. And at 60, I feel, and I have nothing good to look towards, right? If I'm looking at my brother, my sister, my mother, my father, but at 60, I feel like after my knee surgeries and I really dedicated myself to building muscle, for me, inner thigh muscle was like the main thing I needed. And not everyone is the same, but I walk like a duck and I turn my
yeah.
feet out. You do that, and a lot of people do that. You're not going to have a great tone in your inner thighs. So once I built muscle, I'm in much better shape. But one of the things I tell people, I get injured all the time, right? I'm
Yeah,
hypermobile. Like what you were saying about ankles, that's really interesting about you and your brother. I turn my ankle constantly. Never hurts, right? It hurts for
right,
like 5 seconds and I just rebound. The fact that your brother gets injured means his ligaments are tighter than yours and they give instead of they don't give. Where my
right.
ligaments just go flop, it's like my ankle bone touches the floor and I pop back up, just from a crack in the road. Um, but I would like to believe that the work I have put in terms of posture, walking, and exercising correctly, and building all of the muscle I built is going to help me age better. But that really might be an illusion because the
No, I
same.
don't think it is. Honestly, I'm because I haven't been in this game as long as you have, but I've gone through like a bunch of clients in the past couple of years, and I just don't want to put them through like some kind of crazy workout right away, which some other trainers, that's what they do. Like they're just like, all right, let's just go hard, like right away. We'll warm up and just go hard. And then sometimes these people get hurt because it's just like too much weight for them to handle. Everybody that I've worked with that has, for like a significant amount of time that has put on muscle is the better for it by far.
Absolutely.
Like they are able to, I mean, they're more able to get up out of their chairs, they just feel better about themselves also, which is nice. But where was I going with this? I think their long-term pain has actually gone away, and all it took was like just build some muscle, build it in the right way. You can't just do whatever the hell you want, but
So
build it in the right way and figure out what the right exercises are. But generally, it's also about aligning your body correctly, which I think a lot of people, like I'll see people in the gym who are doing their own routine and their hips are like twisted. And I'm like, that's like at some point, like your back is gonna hurt, and you're to be like, I don't know what I did wrong. It's like it's just because your hips have been twisted all this time, and it's at some point, like your muscles like we're done, compensate. Like I'm tired.
It
I
will
need a
catch
break.
up.
I'm going on vacation, So
Yeah, no, a couple of different things about that. One, an interesting thing is I just was reading a study yesterday about weightlifting for people in their 80s. Because it
yeah,
used to be considered that you can't build muscle after 65. Like that was just like the conventional wisdom. And they did a study of people, they put them on a weightlifting regimen 3 days a week, I think, or 4 days a week. And every one of them built muscle mass,
yeah. I
right?
think I don't. Yeah, I know that it's you can't build it as much as you can when you're 27 or 17, but yeah, I think you can build it all the way to the end, right?
Totally.
And now
So
there's these things, there's testosterone replacement therapy and all this stuff. So you could,
the other
if you
thing,
really wanted to.
like when I got to yoga, I was rollerblading a lot, like 20 miles, 25 miles. So I was definitely doing stuff. But after my first yoga class, I could not walk for 3 days, right? My hamstrings hurt so much. I was living on the third floor and I had two dogs. And you have to go up two flights, get the dogs, go down two flights, walk them. Like it was unbelievable to me that I couldn't walk up the stairs, right? And it took a while. And in the beginning in yoga, I would see people who are obviously been doing it a while, taking two classes in a row. And I'm like, what are you talking about? I have to go take a nap after a class. Like who? And then a year later, 6 months later, I'm like, I'm going to take a second class. You know, my wife, here's a shout out to Burn Boot Camp on Chagrin Road in Cleveland, Ohio. My wife goes to Burn Boot Camp and they don't ramp you up. It's a group class and she gets in there. She started, it wiped her out. Like she would come home from class so red in the face, and it's a 15-minute drive basically, right? Still so red in the face after one of these classes. And it's crazy. It's like, rope work and jumping and weightlifting, and they're just yelling at you, get more weight, get more weight. It's been 14 months now, and her everything is so much better. Her stamina, her strength. She went from 10-pound weights to 25-pound weights for pretty intense exercises.
Yeah.
And so there is definitely a value to ramping things up and taking it somewhat slow to get into it. But then if you're willing, just dive right in and you will catch up, right? Like your stamina, your strength, your exertion, it will catch up. And these things that you think are so incredibly hard will eventually become easy. And there's no other way. Like when I talk about bike riding, which like I don't even want to talk about it because I haven't been able to ride since New Year's, and I refuse to bring the bike trainer inside. I hate that stupid thing. And my mental health is so based on my ability to get out for an hour and ride every day. Um, but I ride for either an hour or an hour and 40, like 10 miles or 20 miles. And when I started, 10 miles kicked my butt, right? And I'm
Right.
not in terrible shape. 10 miles kicked my butt. And then I moved up to 20 miles. It's just an extension of my ride. And that extra 10 miles destroyed me. I would literally come home and lay on the couch for like 90 minutes. And now I honestly, 10 miles is like I haven't done anything. I get off the bike and I'm calmer and more relaxed than before. And now 20 miles is almost as easy. I don't do 20 as nearly as much as I do 10, but 20 miles is almost as easy and has no effect on the rest of my day the way it used to, right? So it's just getting stronger is a process that people have to be willing to endure. And unfortunately, we are a world full of people who do not want to endure, right? You don't want to be bad before you're good. You don't want to feel bad on the road to being feeling good. And that's just really it's just hard about life. And I want to credit biking, and I know this is your issue because you're a big biker. biking has tightened up my hamstrings in the nicest way,
Hmm.
right? My hamstrings used to be so loose, and they're still plenty loose, right? I can wake up in the morning and put my palms flat on the floor without trying,
That's
right?
crazy.
But now there's some tension there, and I love it, and that's, I think, purely from one of the benefits, even though I think biking is not the best exercise for people if you're not doing three or four other exercises,
Right.
right? I bike and I walk and I hike and I do yoga daily. Like I'm doing a lot around my biking. I don't think anyone should do any one thing, right? I think anyone who has a one exercise life, it's better than having a no exercise life, but it's really, I don't think it's great, especially to be honest, biking. Like people who just bike, that's gonna really that can really mess with you in the long run because it's not weight bearing, which is really not a great thing. There's no
Right.
twisting, it's not a great thing. There's a lot of weird biking is a weird exercise, but it's amazing how much I love it.
Yeah, I haven't biked in a long. I mean, I bike to work every day, but I take a city bike, so that's not really biking.
Oh, it's an e-bike?
It's an e-bike. Yeah, I usually if I can find an e-bike. Yeah, because the non e-bike city bikes are they weigh like 9,000 pounds, and they're just
Wait,
the
what's it do
gears are
with your
so
bike?
small. It's like it's impossible. They're almost impossible to ride. But I do ride them sometimes because sometimes I don't. There's no e-bike available.
Wait, what happened to your bike?
My bike was stolen from in front of
Ah,
my gym, so that was a real bummer. And I haven't bought a new one because um, I don't know actually. I haven't bought a new one because I've been city biking, and I've been doing more lifting, and there's only so much time in the day, you know. And it
totally.
kind of
Well,
broke my heart that my bike got stolen. It kind of broke my heart. So because it's not the first one that's been stolen, and I was it kind of bummed me out. So but I need to get back on it, and because I do miss it. But you ride in the middle of like suburban Ohio. I'm in the middle of Brooklyn.
oh yeah, I ride on a path
It's not
even.
as fun, you know what I mean? Like, so I'm trying to decide also what kind of bike to get. Like, should I get a gravel bike so I can do like different paths and stuff like that, or a road bike because I don't want to get a mountain bike. So, um,
But it's also like when I come back to New York and ride, I always bring my bike. And New York
oh
is
yeah,
now a bike riding city, right? Because everything is bike
yeah.
paths. So
No,
I
there's a
stay
lot
in
of bike paths. Yeah,
Greenpoint and I bike to Prospect, and it's crazy because they'll say like 90% of it is bike path, um, which is so great. But it's still so insane because of just the number of people, and then all the delivery guys on their e-bikes and scooters use the bike path, and
yep.
that's kind of nutty. But I love how New York has really become a biking city. It's such a bummer that it's also a city where your bike is going to get stolen, very
Multiple
often.
times a year.
So that's just so intense. All right, let's get back to
Um, but
hypermobility.
yeah, no, I want to interject because I met this guy the other day, and he rides like every weekend, and he found a group. Like he just moved to New York, but he already has a group that he rides with. They go to Bear Mountain from like Manhattan, right? So they're doing like 100-mile rides and whatever,
Right.
And he's in good shape. He looks very fit. But also, I'm the same as you. Like I wonder at some point, like you look at professional bikers and their legs are massive, right? And their upper body's like it's like a twig, you
Totally.
know. And there's got to be. I mean, I'm sure like shoulders are strong because you got to be on your you there's a lot of tension in your shoulders all the time. But I just feel it is definitely there's no question that it's creating imbalances. And I've been
Most
now I've
people.
started weightlifting, which I was never really into before, but I'm enjoying it, and it's all really about like striking a balance, and I don't work my shoulders as much because I'm often find myself like doing back and biceps day, and then like a chest and triceps day, and then I'll do like a deadlift day and then a squat day, and because I do a lot of butt exercises because my butt is not very strong and also very inactive. So, which I find is the problem with a lot of people.
Oh, totally. But here's an interesting thing about weights and hypermobility. I've tried to lift weights numerous times in my life.
Yeah,
and failed. Like got injured every single time.
because you didn't
And
have the right personal trainer.
that's exactly right. So then
You should hire me.
I
I'll come over
totally,
and give you a
um,
session.
I'd love it. Come to Cleveland.
I
I,
will.
I then about 2 years ago, I'm riding my bike and I do the same path every day, which I think is for my nervous system and my brain. I love that same, doing the same thing all the time.
Some
I'm riding my
meditation.
bike and they're doing some construction on the side of my path. And 2 days later, there's an outdoor gym and it's machines.
Oh yeah.
And it's push and pull machines and they can't change the weight. It's just whatever, right?
Yeah.
And so I said, okay, this is great. Like serendipity. I'm going to start doing them. I got injured almost immediately. Like I hurt my elbow. And I was like, this can't be right. Like, and then I just changed my alignment. I brought my right elbow in a little bit and that pain went away. And I literally started at like 10 reps and now I'm up to 25 or 30 reps. I feel like that has changed my body and changed my mind. Like and now, if you can see, I have because I can't
Yeah.
ride winter, it drives me crazy. I got some dumbbells and I've been
What are
working
those? What are the weights on those?
10 and 15.
You need 20s.
Well, it's interesting because the 20s are up in my wife's office and I haven't gone to get them. And I'm not the strongest person. Like the
You are
15s,
very strong. Don't sell yourself
well,
short.
it's all relative. But I'm gonna get a
You also
kettle.
need.
I
You should
did
get
literally
yourself
that
a
was perfect,
kettlebell.
perfect
You should.
timing.
You should get one.
So wait, what is that weight? Because when you look online, everyone is like start with 30. And I'm like, really?
This is 35.
Yeah.
So it
I'm gonna
depends what you're doing. Like if I'm showing you, I could show you like a couple of. I'm not a kettlebell expert, but I do like them. Just because of the weight distribution is different than the dumbbells, like in my mind. And I think if you're doing like rows, if you have a dumbbell, like, imagine that I'm leaning forward if I'm rowing, the weight is bringing me down. So I really got to control it a lot more. Whereas a dumbbell, it feels like it isn't dragging me down as much. If
oh,
that
that's
makes
really
any
interesting.
sense.
No,
Um,
that's really interesting.
and I think I've tested it out with my clients and stuff, and they are like, yeah, no, there's definitely like there's a lot more pulling happening. So I don't know why it's like a weird thing, but anyway, it's like people can do. I know people can do like 180 pounds lat pull downs, can't do a single pull up. It doesn't make sense, but that's how it is. Like
That
there's just
is
weird shit like that.
so interesting. I can't do a pull-up, but I think to me, the only connection I would make is that I don't know what connection I'd make. That's so interesting. It's
Yeah,
just
no,
that I can't do even the beginning of a pull-up because of my lats. Like
right.
everything
So
is
you
just
should
so
be doing
off.
them. Do they have a pull up bar at that outdoor gym?
Yeah, they do.
You should
Um,
be doing just these.
so I can hang
You
for
can
about
hang, but then you want to be depressing your shoulders, right?
do a
Bring your
little bit.
shoulder blades down the back. And
A
that's going
little.
to engage your lats like crazy. And I guarantee you, if you do 20 of those tomorrow, you're going to feel that shit.
That's great. No, I will actually start thinking about that.
Yeah, because I have my clients, I have them start like this, right? First of all, you can start with a neutral grip if they have a neutral grip one, because that's easier. Sorry, you got me going now. I'm not
Yeah,
going to
no,
stop
I have a bar in my basement. I just think they look ugly hanging in my doorway.
like that, and then you just do scapular depression, right? Or you can take it wide, and then you're working the lats a lot more, right?
No,
Because here you're going to be working the middle, like the rhomboids and the traps as well. But here you're really getting so much more into the whole lat, right? Because the lat is kind of almost broken down into three pieces because it's a really big muscle, as you know. Because I learned that part from you. But it's like
I mean,
there's different exercises that can target the upper lat, the middle lat, and the lower lat.
everyone needs rhomboids and traps too, but the fact that the lats are the only muscle connecting the arm to the spine and pelvis makes it a very, very important.
Huge.
Very.
Yeah, it's like that elbow thing that you have is probably from like your lats not being as engaged as they could be.
Well, the length of my lats is what allows me to do handstands the way I do them. Like I can just go woo, like I have the length to let my body has no problem going up. And I will say another thing about my bike that has changed my life, and people don't get this all the time, is that my for a lot of people bike with their pelvis tucked under, which is really not a good thing.
Uh-huh.
And because I'm obsessive about not doing that, when I first started biking, my lower back hurt for a while. That went away. My upper back hurt for a while. That went away. My neck hurt for a while. That went away. And I used to have rotation problems in my neck, and I am like shocked at, and that's biking is the only thing that I've done that consistently that would have changed my spinal muscles. But biking in the correct position has locked in my erector spinae and my multifidus, and that has been an extraordinary. Like I used to have neck stuff all the time. I had a Feldenkrais session once that blew. I had fixed something in my middle back and ruined my neck for like 18 months, and that stuck with me. That neck thing, and now it is completely gone. I never thought that would go away. Never thought it was going to go away.
And
But yeah,
you credit biking because you changed the way the shape of your aerodynamism in a sense.
totally. Here's the thing, like if you want to build glutes, you're not going to bike. You want to build glutes, you squat or hike, right? So, but I
Right.
do think if you want to build your spine in a really good way, bike in the correct position and it will really help. And how will it help hypermobility? Because muscle tone helps hypermobility. And
Yeah.
what I'm going to transit back to hypermobility. What exactly is hypermobility? Right? It's basically ligamentous laxity, where the way the body works, muscles, bones hold you up, muscles move you, nerves tell the muscles to move the bones. That's like my simple description.
Yeah.
Um, Muscles are connected to bones through tendons, and ligaments connect the bones to each other. So the ligaments of the body are what's really keeping the integrity of the skeleton, right? And what are ligaments? Ligaments are connective tissue. Everything is connective tissue. Muscle, ligament, tendon, fascia. It is all connective tissue with different uh, layers of tension, right? Different amount of tension, but they're all made up by this of the same thing, which is collagen. And hypermobility or ligamentous laxity, which is what leads to hypermobility, is an imbalance or a deficiency in the collagen in the ligaments. And that's just an incredibly important thing. And collagen is a protein, and it's what gives um, ligaments their strength. And there are a lot of supplements for them, but I don't know anyone who has really um, change their hypermobility necessarily by with collagen supplements and stuff like that.
Yeah, I wondered about that because everybody's talking about collagen supplements nowadays and like whether it can regrow cartilage and all this or like make your like lack of cartilage, the joints where you've lost cartilage, like, if you've had a meniscus reduction surgery or something like that. Not saying that I know anybody who has. Um,
No, Chinese
Everybody
medicine
who's listened to any of
is
these
a lot of.
podcasts knows that I have almost no medial meniscus left in my left knee. But I've wondered about those, and I've never tried it because I do think it's like snake oil a little bit. I don't, I think it's probably good for your skin, which it's not like I'm getting younger, so that might be worth exploring. Um,
Well,
but I wonder if it's good for like for making your ligaments stronger and your tendons stronger.
supposedly it will, but you want to hear a
But
really
how much do
interesting
you have to ingest, man? Because it has to, you
that
know what I mean? Saying like,
that's the thing. Like, I don't love taking pill supplement form, right? But like, let's say broccoli is high in collagen. Yeah,
yeah,
there's not enough time in the day to eat enough broccoli to get the amount of collagen you need to support to change
yeah,
your, you have to take supplements. But here you want to hear this is a fascinating thing about hypermobility. You ready? People with hypermobility and the different levels of hypermobility are different in Ehlers-Danlos, but let's say a lot of people who are hypermobile, they look incredible. their skin looks incredible
Yeah.
because people with hypermobility, people with collagen issues are not going to wrinkle. If you don't have, like it's just a strange thing to have an issue. Let's say it's Ehlers-Danlos or any kind of any other form, where if you objectively look at somebody and go, "Wow, your skin is beautiful. Like you look great. You have great color," which is actually another part of like hypermobility issues, and then it makes it even harder for people to say, "Wait, there's something wrong." Not, I don't want to use the word wrong, but oddly, the idea that you could look at skin that doesn't wrinkle as an indicator. My father at 87 had no wrinkles.
Right.
85, you know, when he and we I never understood why that was, you know. And I don't think I'm going to wrinkle that much as I get older, which is a positive on some way. But what's fascinating to me is that it's not an indication of health necessarily,
Right.
right? That you can have this issue and actually look better than some people because of this issue. That makes it even more confusing.
No, that's true. And I was reading up on it a little bit, and it can cause like it's like what you were talking about, IBS and problems with your because everything is hyperlax, right? So your aorta is hyperlax, so it can cause like your blood pumping to your heart, like to be it can be bad for you, right? You can get like I think it can lead to fibromyalgia a lot as well. It's just that's one of the things that hypermobility can lead to, and so
Super, super connected. They're very different, but
yeah,
super connected. Like a lot of different autoimmune diseases can be connected to hypermobility, fibromyalgia, lupus.
lupus.
Yeah. And so it's not that one causes the other, but very often they fall under a similar umbrella, which is just wild because again, it's that kind of hidden thing where you don't realize that this thing, like with me, I got when I got to yoga, ankle to knee, a yoga pose.
Yeah,
It was Jiva Mukti, 1995. And I kind of just went into ankle to knee to warm up, and people were like, "How do you do that?" And I'm like, I don't know. I've been doing it my whole life. This is just what I do. And they thought it was amazing. And my teachers thought, look, let's just go deeper into that split. And I actually years later realized, oh my God, my ability to do ankle to knee and these things, that's why my knees blew out, right?
right.
But it doesn't appear that way if you don't know. So I had no idea. I was like, this yoga stuff is for me. I could put my feet behind my head. I could do crazy tricks. But that was in one way my downfall. But I don't mind because the best thing that ever happened to me was having three knee surgeries and then having a teacher saying, "What are you doing to prevent a fourth knee surgery?" And me realizing, oh my, I am not doing anything, and everything about my life is different. I stand differently. I walk differently. I exercise differently. Everything, and I do more. Everything is different because of the trouble I went through. So I am
Right.
incredibly, incredibly thankful for it. Because had I not had those injuries, I really don't think I would have ever gone on the path. The work I do is purely because of my injuries. I had a call this morning with a prospective client, and you know, for whatever it's worth, I am a high school dropout with no particular credentials, other than I have suffered in similar ways to the people that I work with, right? And like, I had really severe social anxiety, and I'd like to say that's reduced by about half, which has just been like also life-changing for me. Um, but I'm able to say, look, I get it. Like this stuff makes you crazy when you don't
Yeah.
understand what you're going through. I never knew I was hyper. I never knew what social anxiety was. I just knew I felt really uncomfortable at parties. I really felt uncomfortable at small talk, and it made me miserable, right? My whole life. And then you learn about the nervous system, You learn about the sympathetic nervous system and you go, oh, when I am at a party and my mouth is dry and my spine is tingling, that's because my nervous system is telling me I'm in a not happy place, right? But I had that sensation. I knew it my whole life. But it wasn't until I learned that what it was that I was able to put a name to it. And I actually feel there were therapies that really helped me with my social anxiety stuff, right? But I think I brought that up just to say like what I why I do what I do is because of how messed up I am.
Um, okay.
Yeah. And I have two children that I really hope will not be as messed up because I am so aware of how messed up I am.
Well, how yeah, well, that's um I know that my son does not have social anxiety. So that's that's a really good start. And I used to have it, but I cured it and for better or for worse, I think. Um because we are talking about we were talking earlier about my inability to sell very well, and I think that's has a lot to do with me just being wanting to be everybody's friend. But going back to hypermobility, and I did want to mention because I did mention my client who had like collapsed arches, basically, who's that we've been working on, and I've been using some of the techniques that I learned in one of your classes and some other stuff that I've looked up and learned picked up along the way in my own training. And I had somebody that I ran into who was like, when are you guys going to do more podcasts? Like, I miss listening to your podcast. And I said, well, we're working on it. And, is there anything that you wanted us to talk about more, and he was like, plantar fasciitis would be good. Like, it didn't even like skip a beat. Like, he wanted to talk about plantar fasciitis. And I feel like I don't know much about it actually, and I'm one of the stuff I did look into. Is not in my head right now, um, because I've never had it.
My new video streaming video program releases February 25th. Plantar fasciitis pain relief program. So we
Oh
should definitely
yeah,
do that for our next podcast.
yeah, we could definitely talk about it. But yeah, I was, the whole thing about this person that I was training about his arch was like lifting up your arches, like, and lifting up your inner thigh muscles because it's all connected and everything is collapsing to the center, right? Or not to the center, it's just like everything from the center is collapsing down. And just like lifting up your pelvic floor, lifting up those muscles you were talking about, the adductors, inner thigh muscles. Somebody told me the other day, they're like, well, I'm X-legged. And I'm like, well, you don't have to be. And you certainly shouldn't be
Wait,
doing that
you're
while
what?
you're, X-legged. Like instead of being bow-legged, their legs, the knees go in instead of going out, because I'm bow-legged,
Yeah.
right? But when I lift, like I'm very careful about not having my knees like go out, right? They track over my second and third toe. That's the way it's supposed to be. You know what I'm saying? And like I'm always looking out, like if my hips come out of alignment and I start feeling it in my knee, so I know it's my hip that's like my left hip coming forward. So I just have to push back into that left hip. And it's small things like that. And you can certainly use a variety of like different techniques like bands, or even sometimes I just do a manual thing where I just pull like the hip back. But really teaching people to be aware of their bodies is like a huge thing, and again, like I have one client the other day, she put her arm on and was like, your elbows should not look, I mean mine are fine, but hers were like, it was like popping up, and I was like, your
Well,
elbow
the
should
thing is, when she
it should
straightens
not
her
do
elbow,
that. And she's
when
like,
she
what do you
stra-
mean?
when she
Yeah.
straightens her arm, instead of hyperextending it, she thinks she's bending it.
Right. She when she straightens it, it goes like, I can't even do it, but you see what I'm trying, like I'm trying to,
No, totally.
it goes like that.
But try to understand though that her brain, it's all about the brain.
No, I know
Yeah.
that's like
So it's
because she's
perception.
like, I don't understand what I'm doing. And I'm like, I'm telling you, you need to do we need to do more curls. Like,
Well, no, don't no. Thinking about it differently. So if someone hyperextends their arm, their elbow, right, which I can't do, their elbow as as it's called carrier arm or just it's a crazy angle, right?
yeah,
Their brain thinks their arm is straight. Their brain doesn't know their arm is hyperextended. So when I say straighten your arm, which is really like I have to tell them, you're going to bend your elbow a little bit and bring you into line. Their brain now thinks their elbow is bent, right? So that's
right,
one of the things they have to change their brain perception so that they start to realize, because that's what I thought. My hyperextended knees, I thought my legs are straight. And then I stopped hyperextending, and for a month or more, I thought my knees were bent. And then
right.
I finally realized, oh, they're actually straight. But I want to say something about the X angle with legs, which is a really interesting and important um, thing to realize, right? The X angle thing is something I run into with women way more than men,
Yep,
predominantly women. The X thing is actually a developmental pattern that's normal when we're babies and toddlers and first moving, and we're supposed to process out of that, right? We're supposed to go from the X to bring the shins under the knees, and it just doesn't happen for everybody for whatever reason. But I just want to clarify, I don't think you can change that X angle, like structurally. Like you
no,
can't change your bow legs structurally. Your legs, your bones are actually bent, right? But
yeah,
the thing to emphasize is you could change the musculature around the X angle. So like when I work with someone who's bow-legged, it's so easy for me on a certain level. You have your fibularis or your peroneal muscles, whatever you want to call your outer calf muscles, they are built for bow legs. So you're going to have to redevelop them. Your bow legs are not going away, but you're going to
right.
get your muscles to work much better for your body by getting out of the way they've been developed for the bow-leggedness, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah. No, I think it's all about providing the support, right? Providing the support for your bones. That's like you said, muscles move the bone. So
No, that's
the
it. And
muscles
that's
have to move the bone in an efficient way that you can like, you know, you you need to redevelop like muscles. And oftentimes, you're talking about fibularis, but I find, like the least common denominator is the butt.
glutes.
Everybody's butt is inactive. Like the glutes are just, glute med you talk about, but it's glute max also, it's like it's the biggest muscle in the body. And for a lot of people, it's like turned off, so
Well, it's interesting because I think it's turned off or overactive in a negative way,
yeah,
right? Because I think poor posture keeps the butt turned on
yeah,
24/7.
it's just
That
gripping.
which doesn't mean that's strong, right? It just means it's way overactive. But I agree about the glutes. Then, what people don't get necessarily about glutes in terms of the three gluteal muscles, maximus, medius, and minimus, they're gluteal, but they have completely different functions, right? Gluteus
Right.
maximus is an extensor, and medius and minimus are internal and external
Uh,
rotators and stabilizers. But it's just getting into the anatomy of all that because I am so on about the glutes. Look, I think the best exercise on earth is hiking. I think
is
there
what?
is hiking.
Oh yeah.
I don't think there is anything to compare to hiking, right? Because if you go up and down a mountain, you are working your gluteus maximus in a way that you just don't usually. Because stairs, they work it, but not in the same way that the dynamics of hiking and moving your foot in different ways and going up in different ways and having to change elevation and going up on rocks or whatever. So to me, there's no better way to build the glutes, even though I haven't been hiking a ton lately because I got so into biking. Um, but I totally agree with you. And then the thing about gluteus medius and minimus, because gluteus medius is one of the pain muscles, back pain muscles.
Yeah.
Gluteus medius suffers I think in large part due to piriformis being way too tight on most people. And
Yeah.
when the piriformis is tight, the gluteus medius has nothing to do. It just disappears. It withers on the vine. Piriformis just doesn't, a tight piriformis, which draws kind of the leg and the sacrum closer to each other,
Hmm.
doesn't allow gluteus medius to do anything. So I am totally in agreement. You got to wake up gluteus medius. We just don't talk about minimus that much, but they're interchangeable in a weird way. You got to
I think
wake up
I'm, yeah.
medius
Go
and
on.
you got to strengthen maximus, and that is life changing.
I think a lot of it has to do, I mean, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the TFL often is tight and taken over for like the action of not letting the glute med like do the work that it's supposed to do.
So that's a great observation. It's an interesting thing. Like if I'm standing up straight and I lift my leg out to the side, that's a gluteus medius exercise and it's a tensor fasciae lata exercise. They
Oh,
are both designed to engage and work. And then the standing side, especially gluteus medius, is supposed to stabilize you for balance. And I definitely think for different reasons, for different people, the TFL takes over in a lot of these things. But I also think, in terms of posture, TFL being a part of the IT band, I think posture is what's ruining people's relationship to the IT band and the tensor fasciae lata. Like, sinking your thighs forward. The minute your thighs go forward and not instead of underneath your pelvis, your
yeah,
IT band is toast. Your
yeah,
tensor fasciae lata is toast. Like they need the support of the femur to really be able to function correctly. TFL has an internal rotation, but if you're standing in old you with a tucked pelvis, you're externally rotating that the whole time, your whole life.
yeah,
You're just in trouble.
yeah. So it's just pulled tight. So I've been releasing mine like every day.
What do you mean releasing?
Well, I just foam roll.
I hate the foam roller.
Yeah. Well, we can.
No, I don't really hate it at all. I just hate anything that is not curative. And I meet very few people who say, well, I used the foam roller for a month. It fixed my story and I got rid of it.
Yeah, you have to use a foam roller in an intelligent way. So it's not just about foam rolling; it's about foam rolling and then activating the muscle that is lying dormant of the overactive muscle that you just foam roll. So what I usually do is I'll foam roll my TFL, right? And I'll have my clients do this too because everybody who foam rolls their TFL is like they're like looking for it, and then I'm like, yeah, you're not in the right spot. You got to roll out to the side just a little bit, and then they make this face like, you know.
Great.
I'm like, see, that's it. You just found it. They're like, but that's really hurts. I'm like, that's because it's tight. You got to release it, and then I'll have them do clamshells or the crab walk to activate the glute med.
That's great. That's
And
great.
then we can go and do stuff to like build the coconuts, the
I
glutes, the
teach a
fishes.
specific version of clamshells because I think most people are not doing clamshells correctly at all.
Oh
And
yeah, that's
not
true.
activating gluteus medius at all when they're doing it. They're not. I think the essence of a clamshell is to separate the leg from the pelvis. And most people are doing a clamshell. The top leg comes up, the pelvis goes with it. Top leg goes down, the pelvis.
100%.
And it's just, and what's so amazing to me about that is these people have been in therapy, physical therapy for years, doing clamshells for years. And I'm like, yeah, you did something. I wouldn't call it a clamshell, doing this thing, and then you wonder why am I not getting stronger or better or healing, Um, which is kind of so much of my stuff is like you gotta be conscious of what you're doing. That's
Yeah.
what I'm teaching people, right? I'm teaching you to change your perception and start to understand that when I do a clamshell, there's a very specific thing I'm supposed to feel, which is gluteus medius deep in the butt. And if you don't feel it, figure out a way of doing it to feel it. My private program is called Be Your Own Healer. And the same, I was talking to this client this morning, a prospective client, and she was just very honestly saying, I don't know if I'm capable of doing it myself. And that's when I said to her, I said, look, the name of my program is Be Your Own Healer. We're on Zoom, right? I'll show you how to stand. I'll show you how to walk. I'll show you how to exercise. I don't fix anyone. I guide you to fix yourself. Don't choose to fix yourself or you don't want to. A lot of people don't want to. They want to go to a doctor and be fixed.
That's
But
why I
if,
have people coming to me after a year, still, coming to personal training.
yeah, but everyone has got to do the work. But not everyone's up for it. And more power to them. That's what I say to people. Like, look, you're struggling and you're suffering. And I know you want to fix, right? But you're only coming to me because no one has fixed you before. No one comes to me first, right? You're only coming to me because no one has really helped you. And I'm here to tell you that, yes, I'm quote unquote going to help you, but really, I'm not going to help you. I'm going to show you how to help yourself.
Right.
But not everyone's up for that. And I honor that. I don't, what do I care, You want to work with me, I want to work with you. If you don't want to work with me, I don't want to work with you. It's all good. But to me, if you want to age well, you want to live long, you want to wipe your butt when you're 90, which is my goal in life, you've got to you've got to learn how your body works. We've been here in Cleveland 6 years, and I just picked up a class at a yoga center for the first time in all this time. So I'm teaching 1 day a week at a flow yoga center. Yoga in Cleveland is all Baron Baptiste yoga. It's really fascinating. I don't know how he like took over a city, but it's all Baron Baptiste, really hot flow, heavy,
Mhm.
it's weird. And I don't teach that, but I met this woman and she's like, I'd like you to teach for me. And I say, great, I'm happy to do it. I haven't taught in public in years. And sales, I've never really tried. I waited 6 years for somebody to say, I want you to do it.
Right.
And so I'm in these classes with these people who take these hot yoga classes. And I say, this exercise is for your tricep. And this exercise is for your calf. And then they're like, wow, no one has ever taught me that way before. I've never taken a yoga class that way. And I'm like, look, after you get hurt for years and years and years and discover why and how to fix it, why I can't teach any other way, right? The
Right.
only way I can teach is to tell you that every muscle has a purpose, every exercise has a purpose, and if you're not fulfilling that purpose, again, there's still a point to exercise because it's better than not exercising, right? But if you can't fulfill that purpose, you are not serving yourself nearly as well as you can.
Yeah. No, that's
So let's transit very quickly to a little bit about hypermobility because we did mention collagen and collagen supplements.
sorry, I
And
was lost in my thoughts for a second. We
no
were
problem.
talking.
We mentioned collagen supplements, and
Yeah.
there's no necessarily nothing you can not stuff you can necessarily do for your hypermobility supplement wise. Collagen certainly is not going to hurt. There is an interesting supplement out there, and again, all my stuff is anecdotal. I read a lot about something and I see what comes up a lot. But there is a supplement called MSM.
Yeah.
MSM is supposedly like considered by many the best thing for hypermobility and ligamentous support. And here's an interesting thing about MSN, and I'll tell you about another study I was reading that really blew my mind. So why MSM is considered to be successful or good is it crosses the blood-brain barrier. And the blood-brain barrier is this amazing thing in the brain that prevents bacteria from passing it to get to the brain,
Hmm.
right? But diseases like Alzheimer's are about bacteria that gets through the blood-brain barrier to kind of destroy the brain.
Hmm.
So MSM and then like lion's mane mushroom also is a sub not for hypermobility, but it's a natural, it's a mushroom that supposedly crosses the blood-brain barrier. Um, and I'm fascinated by the blood-brain barrier. So this study that I was reading, which is such a cool concept, Alzheimer's, right? They've not had a ton of success with Alzheimer's drugs and stuff and dementia medications. They have now discovered, and again, it's a study, so it's not necessarily going to be in public yet, or it'll be more trials, if I had to guess, more tests. They are using ultrasound to open or pierce the blood-brain barrier to get the Alzheimer's drugs to work. And I thought that, I mean, that's such a cool idea that, they're using,
Wow.
yeah. And I'm halfway through the study. I'm halfway through dozens of stupid studies. But I'm really curious to finish it. And I'm just fascinated by that. The thing about study is, I talk about sleep a lot, right? Like we have learned more about sleep in the last 10 years than we knew in 150 years before that. And then
I believe that.
obviously we're learning more and more about Alzheimer's in the same way.
I think it's true of like fitness too, now that I'm in that game, it's just there's been more studies and just more what's the word I'm looking for? Um just more research on like
Everything.
fitness and just what weightlifting, the effects of weightlifting on the body and how to like prepare your body for weightlifting and biomechanics and all this stuff. Like there's more research that's been done in the last like 15 years and probably in the 50 years prior to that. And when those guys like Arnold Schwarzenegger were, lifting and building up their bodies, like they were like two ways, and now there's all these multiple different ways to like really build strength,
No,
you know.
I really love
Um
it. Do you have one of these things? It's a hand grippy thing.
yeah, I don't
Uh,
think I have it here, but I have it somewhere, yeah.
this is my latest obsession because I was reading a book, and in the book it said grip strength is one of the greatest indications of longevity. So I literally I went online, and my thing is sometimes I spend a lot of money, sometimes I buy the cheapest thing. And they sell these grippy hand things. It's a squeezing thing if you can't see me on video.
Yeah.
And they sell them for upwards of $50. This was $6. So I gave a lot of
Is
them
it
away.
adjustable?
Yeah, totally.
Oh, that's cool.
I gave a lot of them away for Christmas, right? I gave them, my mother-in-law is 82 years old, and she said her grip strength is getting better. And it's hysterical because I showed her mine and she went to squeeze it, and I'm on like serious tension. She's like, I can't do it. And I dialed the whole thing back, and she was able to start doing it. So that's been my latest obsession of late is grip strength. And what's really funny about that, you're familiar, Katie Bowman, right?
Yep.
I was listening to this thing about comedians, and I was listening to an interview with a comedian, and they were like, "What comedians do you like?" And he said, "I don't follow comedians because I don't want to be accused of plagiarism, because comedians have they steal from each other." And I thought that was really interesting. And I don't follow a lot of people in my world for the same reason, like I'm trying to work intuitively, blah, blah, blah. But anyway, I'm a big fan of Katie Bowman's, and I used to love her stuff. So I've been on about grip strength. And then in my group program, someone on the call was like, "Do you know who Katie Bowman is?" And I said, "Yeah, she's a colleague and blah, blah, blah." And she was like, "So you didn't know that grip strength was her New Year's resolution?" And I was like, "I love that. I just love that. Like things hit the zeitgeist and people get into grip strength,
Right.
and it's just really cool stuff." But anyway, so
The
I've been doing,
grippy, the like squeezy grippy thing
yeah,
is
so I do it. It
and I
sits on
was
my
showing you
desk.
like that I take kettlebells if you have a little kettlebell and you can try to hold it up with the kettlebell up. It's called the bottoms up kettlebell hold. And that will light up your entire forearm up to the wrist, and it is going to make your grip strength crazy strong.
Dude,
And
I
this
am
is
so
15 pounds, so I can,
wait, how much
push
is
it up
that?
15.
Okay, I am
And I
so
can
sorry.
push it up like into and if you do that, then you start getting really strong. But I usually do it with a little less. I was just showing off because
Yeah, no, that's great.
because I'm 51, I want to show how strong I am. But
I just had to spend. Oh yeah,
I'm
wow.
having my class do it now too because we don't have those grippy things in the gym.
Right.
So,
Oh
but
no,
yeah, that's
you have inspired me. I just had to spend stupid money on new hockey skates for my son.
hmm
Like a year after getting, because it's so evil that these kids grow and their feet grow, and he's like, I need new skates. I'm like, they were freaking $350,
his
and
feet are still growing.
I think he finished, I hope. And we walk in and the new skates were like 550. It was so, but anyway, his old skates are in perfect shape. I found a place that they'll buy them from me,
Yeah.
and I will be buying kettlebells with the money I get from his skate sales.
Yeah, call me and I'll show you some exercises if you
Oh,
want.
that's great.
Because you can do like deadlifts, which I think are really
Yeah.
those would be really good for you. And then you can work your way up to like swings and stuff like that, but also like Turkish get-ups, which are full body, kind of it's like a full body mobility thing. I mean, there's a lot of things you can do. And like I just like even just you know the pushing up with the kettlebell for your shoulder strength
No, I'm
is
so
really
sorry.
great. And when you pull it down, you can pretend you're pulling it down rather than just letting it come down, and then you're getting your lats. So
No, I'm so
there's a lot of
pumped.
things you can do that's really interesting, and
So
but it's
wait,
just
Turkish get-ups are using weights because regular get-ups without weight are phenomenal.
yeah, you can do a Turkish get up with a kettlebell hanging
Great.
from your arm. So you do get ups just like that, just without any weight,
Yeah,
like from lying down to like
exactly.
rolling over and stepping forward.
Yeah, great
Yeah,
exercise.
so you just add the weight and just keep your shoulder packed down,
That's
right?
great.
So you're working on your shoulder stability at the same time. And this is often what happens, right? The arm comes forward, but you really want to keep like punching the ceiling the entire time. And that it's challenging, and you work your way up to like heavier weight. And I think I did a 30 pounds the other
Oh,
day, which was a lot.
nice.
But yeah, but like usually I start warming up with like 15 or 20, 25.
So if I'm going to go buy two kettlebells, 15, 30.
Yeah, I mean it depends what you want to do with it because you'll quickly outgrow them is the problem.
Interesting.
What's your plan? What's the plan with the kettlebell?
Oh, just something until spring. I need to do stuff when I can't bike and use my machines. But
Get
we'll
a
talk about
15.
that.
The 15 is good. 15 is
We'll
good
talk
for like
about that separately. My son plays hockey. Yours plays basketball.
he
My
does.
son is now taller than me. He's not quite 6'8" like Dash, but he's 6 feet. I believe it's part of his hypermobility, and I think he's still growing, right? They're 15 years old.
Yeah,
For hockey, he has to work out every day, right? So
right.
5 days at school, they're in the weight room,
Good.
and he's not particularly strong, and he's
Doesn't
not
matter.
getting all that much stronger. When he squats with weight, it hurts his back.
That's because he's doing it wrong.
Only no, his form is his teacher is actually a cool dude. He was worked for the Pittsburgh Steelers for a decade. Like he's
Okay.
a really good trainer. And he looks at him and goes, "Your form is dead on. I think you have scoliosis." And I
Hmm.
actually don't think he has scoliosis, but we're going to take him to somebody. I think there's nothing wrong with that. But I gave him, your just the observational scoliosis test. The spine looks pretty darn straight. But again, hypermobility. But what's interesting is the guy was like, I don't want you squatting in pain. So let me see you do a goblet squat, which is the kettlebell squat,
Yeah.
no pain. Same form, no pain.
So what's this? I'll tell you. So he's doing like barbell squats with barbell
Yeah,
on his back.
yeah.
This is what. So you should if you can be there and you can look at him, just look at the alignment of his hips, because that's something that nobody ever looks at, and that is definitely like because your back can be straight and you can have that lumbar curve, right, and go down as far as you want until like before the butt wink happens. But if your hips are misaligned, that can mess with your back. And I don't know where his pain is in the back, if it's the lower back, the middle back, or
Mid
the upper back.
thoracic, mid thoracic.
Thoracic.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I would check that.
I'm so psyched. I'm gonna get him to get one of his buddies to take video for me.
Yeah, but make sure it's like really of like really up close, and
Yeah,
then from the side, from both sides as well,
that's
and just
awesome.
check, because that's to me that's like that's what happens, and I don't know if it translates down into his knees or his ankles at all, but if it does, then that would be I would be hard pressed for to believe that that's not what's happening.
No, I love that. I'm so psyched. I had a really fun moment with my kids. My daughter's
Because
home
it could
from
be a shoulder thing too. Also, sorry to interrupt, but
yeah,
it's
no
like
worries.
he might be lifting his
Absolutely.
shoulder
No,
like just to
I'm gonna
push the
get him to,
bar up because
yeah.
he's not able to take the weight into his back. I mean, and then what you're talking about goblet squats, that's like packing the shoulders down and really engaging and stabilizing. And that's so that makes sense to me that it wouldn't hurt because he's stabilizing as opposed to the bar being back here and having the shoulders back and your wrists like super bent, you know what I mean? And he's hypermobile. And maybe this is happening. You know what I'm saying? So
Oh, I love
it's
it.
all
I
about like
totally
it's
love
not
it.
about the spine as much as it is probably like some compensation and his body twisting. Because if it's in the thoracic, to me, that's all about the twist.
No, I love that. He doesn't listen to me, but that's fine.
But
Um,
I can get on the horn with him if you want.
no, it's great. And I'm gonna get him to do video. I had a really fun moment with my kids the other night. My daughter's home from college. And her boyfriend was staying here, so we having dinner. And I thought my son left, like him and my wife were leaving. She was driving him somewhere. And she said, "Go get the car. He's learning how to drive. Go get the car." And so I thought he left. And I said to my daughter and her boyfriend, I was like, "Your brother is so cute. He is such a good kid." And then he goes, "I'm still here." And I was like, "Wow, that's cool. I'm glad I didn't say you were a dick." So it was very sweet. And then I said to him, I said, was that weird? He goes, "Yeah, it's really weird that your parents love you." So the whole thing was very, very sweet.
It's nice. Like I had a nice moment with my son too, because I've been a little bit of a down cycle in my moods, and so I sent him a text just apologizing for not being quite as upbeat as I'd like to be, and just he was like, I understand. I just want you to know, like, if you need to vent or talk, and I won't even talk back, you can always talk to me. And I thought that was really touching,
That is
because he's not like really that type of kid, but like the fact that he offered that up, I thought was really nice.
that is really incredible. That's
Yeah.
beautiful. No, parenting is hard, man. I was talking to my son. He used to take guitar lessons and he never practiced. So I said, "You're done with guitar lessons." But he's a really interesting, he's a talented kid and he has a great voice, but he wasn't practicing. So I'm like, "I'm taking guitar lessons away." And this was like 6 or 8 months ago. And he the other day he was saying, "I really kind of want to play." And I said, parenting is really hard because not a week goes by where I don't regret taking your guitar lessons away. Like I felt that I'm spending this money, they're not cheap, and you're not practicing. But why couldn't I have just said, "Who cares? Who cares if I split the money, whatever, I'll spend the money. And if you don't practice, you're still at once a week getting this it's just really complicated to know what is the right thing. He's desperate to play varsity hockey. He's on the JV now. Yeah, and a lot of kids have the same problem, which is like, it's not gonna happen by osmosis. Like if you don't get into I bought him the big net, and for the driveway, I'm like, if you're not out in the driveway every day, when half of your team is in the driveway every day, there is no reason why you're going to get better. And he knows it, but 15, it's hard. You know what I mean? Like I try not to pressure him, but I also, I don't want to coddle him too much. Like it's a fascinating process.
I said the same thing to Dash. It's funny because I'm having the same exact discussion, right? This kid is 6'8". He goes to a
Unbelievable.
private school in Manhattan, right? And he weighs like 187 pounds. He's a skinny bastard. So he's a good basketball player. He can jump high because he doesn't have a lot of weight and he's got a lot of muscles in his legs, so he can jump high. He can get a lot of rebounds. He can get blocks off the glass. It's awesome to watch when he can do that. But he's not really aggressive, right? He doesn't really have like a great outside shot, and he's got like the vritties, like the
Totally.
in his head when he's on the court, he just can't like really focus. He just gets performance anxiety. So I said, look, man. And he said yesterday there was a guy who was like probably about my height, maybe a little shorter, but he was much, much bigger than me. And he was like literally holding me down. And I'm like, he's holding you down because you weigh like 6 pounds. Like you need to put on muscle. You got to be going to the gym. I'm a personal trainer. I will give you a thing to do. I'll give you, I won't even be there, but I'll give you like a thing, a thing to do. But also like, you got to go. I can't make you go. I'm not going to wake you up at 6 in the morning and make you go. Like, it's not all going to come from like just playing basketball. You know what I mean? You have to have stamina. You got to go running. You can't just be hanging back while the rest of your team is on defense and you're just like kind of strolling back. You're like the defensive player. You're the one getting the rebounds, getting the blocks, bro. And you got to get bigger. Because you got to be able to move into the post. You got to be able to stick your butt out and like get into these people's faces. And like, if they're holding you down, you got to be able to hold them down back. And that's all about lifting weights. And then you need to have an outside shot that is 100% reliable. Like there's going to be one spot from the floor where you can make 97%. You have 97% like success rate. And the only way to do that is to go out to a basketball court and to shoot that shot 1,000 times a week, right? But you have to go out and not be playing and fucking around with your friends and dunking because you think it's cool, whatever, and practicing your dunks because that's cool, but you're not doing that shit in the game. But you got to be shooting that shot, and I will go out, rebound for you, and feed you the ball in that exact spot. So you have that spot, and then if like you can make that shot, your defender is going to come out to you, and then you have the option to drive. But if all you're doing is driving, and you're not making any shots from the outside, they're just going to stay in the key, and they're like take you every time. You know what I mean? Like, and he's got moves. Like he can actually play well in the post, but it's like if that's all he can do, that's not the game anymore. Like look at Giannis. Look at the new French guy. He can take threes. Like,
no, it's crazy. But what's interesting is it's the same thing I'm teaching, right? All I'm teaching is muscular, neuromuscular repatterning through repetition.
Yeah.
And that is
exactly
all the muscle memory, and they all need it. But it's great because youth sports are a fascinating way to see kids. Like half of the kids on my son's team go for it, and half of them are afraid of having the puck on their stick. And I'm like, why do you want to play hockey? Why are you making your parents spend all this money for the equipment if it doesn't like you want to do it? And then there are other kids who they work so hard and play so well in practice, and then they get to the game and something happens where they shut down and they can't do it. It's such a trip. But anyway, I think we both have to go.
I do have to go, yeah. But yeah, no, it's interesting that you say that because I'm a decent tennis player. If I start playing a game, it's all like I'm my own worst self-enemy, right? I just discombobulate and I'll lose like 4 games in a row when I should be winning, and it's just like tightness, brain, like the blood-brain barrier you were talking about.
And I'm actually the opposite. We were talking about this. I gave my nephew, he got into cooking, so I gave him a really cool chef's knife for Christmas, and he cut himself with it the first time he used it. And I was like, and he got really upset. And I said to my sister-in-law, that's just a bummer. She's like, no, it's like something happens when he has to do something. And I said, I'm actually the opposite. Like when I teach yoga, if I'm in a group class of 20 people and I want to demonstrate something, I will rarely fail. But if I'm at home by myself working on something, I'm like, why can't I do this when I can do it in the room full of all those people? Like everyone is so different and the brain is so different. So let's end it there. And Alex, it's always a pleasure.
Same here.
Let's talk plantar fasciitis next and come up with some other topics. And anyone who's interested in us talking about anything you want us to talk about, it will probably be like today where ostensibly we were talking about hypermobility, but if I had to guess, we talked about hypermobility about 25% of the time?
No, I
Uh,
think it was probably more.
all right, that's
But
good.
yeah, and also, everybody out there, just please, if you like what we're talking about, please leave us a review, leave us a rating on whatever platform it is you're using. And we are really looking forward to doing more of these because I do enjoy talking with you, even though we don't do it as often as we probably should. And yeah, send us topics. You can send it. What's the email address?
Info@corewalking.com.
CoreWalking.com and info at CoreWalking.com. So I look forward to hearing from you. Thanks for listening in today. And Jonathan, I got to run. So do
All
you.
right. Great
But I'll
chatting,
talk to you
Alex.
real
Thanks,
soon.
everybody. Take care.
Bye. Bye, everyone.